Hello, welcome back to KrunchCrowd. Today I'm doing my second game review on a video game called Scarlet Nexus. Scarlet Nexus, much like the last game I reviewed, is an action RPG, this time developed by Bandai Namco, not just published by. And it's a game that when it was first getting teasers and trailers coming out for it, I was really excited for, but I only played it for the first time a couple of weeks ago, despite it being out for quite a while now. So I'm really excited to be able to share my first thoughts on the game. It's a game that I've very slowly started to fall in love with the combat of, at least in the early hours, so I'm hoping it stays that way by the end, but this is only for the first 2, maybe 3 hours of gameplay. The graphics utilize the classic 3D anime aesthetic Bandai Namco is known for. They have a very big history of video games that twist the art style to be as much like an anime as possible, while also taking its own liberties. Usually through the medium of a fighting game or an action RPG. The best example of which that comes to mind would be Dragon Ball FighterZ, a video game, fighting game based on the Dragon Ball series, created by Arc System Works and developed by published by Bandai Namco. The way the graphics are made and the way the animation is done, all of these small little details such as FPS changes between the model and the effects, really captures the anime aesthetic, and Scarlet Nexus does that too. So they're very comparable in terms of the style, obviously not of the gameplay or the universe or anything, but I'm not really talking about Dragon Ball FighterZ past that anyway. In terms of gameplay, when you're booting up the game, you'll have access to 2 playable protagonists, Yuito and Kasane. They have the same general moveset. You have square to attack, triangle for special attacks, you can dodge, you can block, you can use items and all such. Each character in the universe has access to certain powers. Your player character, whether it's Yuito or Kasane, has psychokinesis, which is essentially telekinesis. You can use your mind to pick up certain objects around the arena and use them to attack. And when you unlock more party members later on, you also gain the ability to use their powers to augment your own. The only 3 that I've used have very different effects, but the 2 most noticeable ones is a pyrokinesis augment, which makes your attacks fire augmented, as you could probably guess, and hypervelocity, which seems to make everything else slow down, as it's implied that you're moving at a significantly accelerated pace. In terms of the differences between the playable protagonists, it's more whether you're going to be using range or close quarters combat. Yuito uses a sword and has a lot of attacks based on getting up close to attack, whereas Kasane uses throwing knives that she uses more from range, and her attacks are more based on making distance while still doing damage. The story, I haven't, again, seen much of because I'm only 2-3 hours into the game. The story seems to follow similarly based on what similarly regardless of what protagonist you pick, just from whichever perspective you play as. Yuito seems to be proving himself as a worthy cadet after volunteering as opposed to being scouted. Kasane, I'm not 100% sure about her unique storyline because I haven't played her outside of a very small amount in the tutorial. There's not really much else I can talk about in terms of the story at the moment because, again, I'm very early on, but it does seem like it's shaping up to be very enjoyable. In terms of the sound design, you've got a lot of diegetic and non-diegetic sounds as usual. There's a lot of hit noises that are over the top to show, hey, you've just hit something, be proud of yourself. A really good soundtrack to match with a lot of the fights, especially the few boss fights I've played. It really complements the gameplay. The over-the-top anime aesthetic, the really rewarding sound design, and that can even be really loud and over the top. They complement each other. It can be a little overwhelming at times, but for the most part it pairs together very well. In terms of replayability, I can say for certainty there's at least 2 playthroughs there before you get bored if you enjoy the gameplay, because 2 different protagonists. Outside of that, I don't think this game will be super replayable from what I can tell, since a lot of it is the same thing over and over, and there's very little variance when you're replaying the game outside of obviously choosing a different protagonist. Maybe if you could do challenge runs or something, it'd make it more fun, but I'm not really sure what you could do in terms of a challenge run for the game. In my opinion, this game is really good. I won't say it's a perfect video game by any means. I don't think there is a perfect video game, but it's a really good, fun game to pick up, play for an hour or two at a time, work through the story, get attached to the characters, and enjoy the gameplay because it is pretty fun. If you're an action RPG fan, or you're a really big fan of the overpowered protagonist gimmick, like I am, you will probably really enjoy the game because a lot of it seems to be, in terms of the story, plot armor for the protagonist. He's better than everybody else, at least speaking from Yuito's perspective, despite not actually being scouted for the role himself, which means that other people seem to be doubting his abilities. But I'd personally say, hey, if you're a fan of action RPG fans, if you're a fan of, again, having a protagonist that's really overpowered and that's the gimmick, I'd say pick it up. There's no reason not to. It's very fun. That more or less concludes it for this review, quote unquote. Again, it's a lot more of a first impressions than a review. I'm trying not to go super into detail with it. I've started to realize a lot of the actual reviews are only landing between 5 to 10 minutes long. And while our only guideline for it is to stay below 10 minutes to make sure we're not going too in depth, I feel like I might be doing a little bit less. So I'll try to increase the length of my reviews in the future, but I can't really make any promises because when you're recording it, it seems like you write a lot and it goes down very quickly. But I'd like to say, if you enjoyed watching, please do feel free to like and subscribe. It's completely free. If you do end up subscribing, you're not entitled to stay. So if you don't enjoy our content later on, you can just unsubscribe. It's equally as free. Please make sure to check out our social media, our Instagram, Twitch, and TikTok, as well as our Twitter, where we try to engage with the community as much as possible when we can. Same with Twitch. We always love seeing new people in the chat or even returning people in the chat. It's really heartwarming to see them. Our next stream is actually the day this goes live at 7 PM GMT. Me, Jamie, and Oscar will be playing GTA Online, so if you do see that today, hey, why not come and stop by? But we're live every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday anyway. Any changes to that will be shown on social media. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.